I myself was not born in Egypt. The social classes are very there's a very drastic change between the lower and the middle and the higher. My parents were both born and raised in Egypt, and they came from a very very low social class, and one of the reasons why they left was because of how hard it is to achieve to get higher and higher into the social classes. Um, Basically, the hardest part about it is getting a great education there. Usually, the education, kind of like here, the best education obviously costs a lot more money, but there is no government help in loans like we have loans and stuff like that. They don't really have that kind of help, so it is hard to achieve a great education and get a good job and be able to build social class for you and your children to come. So that's why my parents came here. There's obviously a lot better opportunity here. But what Egypt's trying to do now is they're trying to change. They're trying to make it more accessible for kids who aren't privileged to have better economic and better social standpoint. All right. Yes, you would, but it wouldn't be in a formal way. Egypt's a very poor country, especially the places where my parents grew up. You will find wealth around there, but the wealthy people tend to exclude themselves from the poor very, very well. You won't ever see like wealthy people roaming around the streets of Alexandria. Other than them probably going to the beach and coming back, you definitely will not see anyone. Everyone you will interact with will usually be in the same social class as you. You know, if you were to think about it as like, you know, living in Trenton, I live in the town of Ramsville, right next to Trenton. Trenton, fairly low social class, and you know, people are always in and out of Trenton. You know, there's life there. So I do see a lot of the lower class, but in Egypt you'll never see anything of the higher class really, unless you physically get out of there. But then you know people don't have cars, people don't have ways of transportation, so people are usually just stuck in one spot and they never really leave. So, for at least that's from what my parents would tell me. Quality of life. I mean, hmm. Well, you'd obviously attend. Growing up, you'd attend normal education. Oh, not I wouldn't say normal education, but kind of the public education there. Um, Usually the same. But what's really it's kind of like the same as here. But what separates is that once you start to, if you have money and you go, I guess, into like deeper education, that's when the drift starts. I guess as kids, people do go to the same education. Well, people go to the same education as poor people just because it's public. People aren't really going to spend money on elementary education and stuff like that. So that's when the drift starts. But as the lower class would get older, attending college usually, and it's not never really a 4-year university. My parents both attended 2-year universities at in Egypt because one, they couldn't spend the extra 2 years. Usually the last 2 years are like the graduate years. You know, you get your associates. They basically just got their associates because that's the only thing they really could afford. So other than that, quality of life.
Like, do people have like cars?
No, it's really all on foot. Very rare trains. Very rarely people go on trains. Taxis usually, but then again, no one would really spend their money on taxis. It's it's a tough life there. I personally stayed. So my parents have an apartment there, and I stayed in their apartment. And you'd be really really shocked about like you'd be like, how could someone possibly live in this place and be able to socialize? And the worst part is it's smack dab in the middle of the city. You know, huge ass buildings. Like, how could kids grow up here? You know,
Yeah.
and middle of the streets. You know, people coming up to you like. I got robbed 3 times when I was in Egypt. Like, yeah, it was really really bad. But yeah, it's more very shocking rather than it's interesting. You know, it's more just like you feel really bad, especially living in America too and seeing the huge cultural difference between the two. High school would have definitely started. Middle school is definitely, I guess, on the border. I guess if you just want to spend the money on it or not. But high school is definitely where you would go to a different education. The wealthy would kind of veer off into private education, and the lower class will stay into the public education. And that's where you know colleges come in. You know, the big colleges will start looking at people in private educations. They'll be very selective. They will choose people in the public educations, but it's very selective, very 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 selective, and it's hard for people to make it out. Even though people in the public education probably are still, if not even better, at an academic standpoint than students in the private institution, they'll still just take the kids in the private. Because I mean, I don't want to bring corruption in here, but like, you know, if you have students who are more wealthy, more donations, yada yada yada, you know, you're not going to get anything from kids that are in public schools or continue to be in public schools. I believe they did, but it was a very, 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 very small amount, like an amount that, you know, you could work a, you know, like a job and be able to pay it off yourself. But I mean, that's what everyone had to do. They had to work, and then they had to pay for their education. If you couldn't work, then your parents would pay for your education. If your parents could pay for your education, then you're screwed, you know.
Yeah.
And that's how it kind of is. But so that's why people tend to, you know, drop out of school, and then it just keeps going and keeps going, and it starts a trend in the education, which is definitely not a good thing. You know, you have to change it somehow, but you know, it's bad in Egypt. Definitely not good. Honestly, I guess fairly normal jobs. Just the pay wages aren't nearly as how they are here. I know my so it's actually funny. My dad has 7 brothers, all engineering majors. I from what my dad told me, it's very, very popular to be an engineer in Egypt. And so he was working a job there, and he actually said that. And then my dad brought him over here. He was an illegal immigrant, and he brought him here, and he was actually working cleaning dishes at a restaurant, and he was making more money cleaning dishes at a restaurant than working a normal engineering job. I mean, of course, it wasn't a great job. It wasn't a good job, but he got that job from his degree, and he was making more money cleaning dishes at a restaurant in New York City than working in Egypt, which is fairly crazy. But yeah, that's how it is. Public education, that's how far it gets you. So right when my dad came, this could be long, by the way, because it's a long story. So he started off, right when he came here, first thing he did, worked at a restaurant, like most immigrants do. Worked at a restaurant, you know, kind of did the hard work. And then he worked at a gas station, and while he was working at a gas station, he started to, he got an education at Manhattan College. Paid for himself, and like literally like probably 5-6 years ago just paid off his loans. But he got an education there, and then right after that he started working at NJDOT, which was his first real, like, actually good job. And he was making good money there, but what stopped him, or he continued working there, but what was very difficult for him was that he was responsible for his family at home. And that's also a tough part, that becoming so engulfed in a culture, and then leaving, and then actually being the person who is the most successful in your family. Now you have to rely on 10, 15 cousins, uncles, brothers, sisters, everything. You have to rely on them. So even though he was making good money, he wasn't making great money, but he was making good money, a lot of that money went to just help his family. But also, I mean, he was making good enough money that he was able to support families, like my uncles and their kids, my aunt and their kids, his brothers. Like it was crazy. So he actually didn't really become, like, he kept spending money on them, because my dad's not a selfish person at all. So he just felt the need that he had to do it. But you know, that's also, there's also a bad part about that, is because your relatives will start to become reliant, and you know, Egyptian culture, you know, they're not the smartest. They're not gonna go out of their way to actually become something great. You know, once they hit their 30s, they're just gonna, you know, settle down, work a stupid paying job, and just settle themselves out, and then try to feed off others. And it kind of seems like a repetitive theme, especially with my family. Since I have no family here, they all live in Egypt. My dad's the only one who actually wanted to come out. So yeah, it's just, they always seem to kind of come back and rely on other people rather than themselves. So yeah, also some things that need to change from Egypt, but people just didn't want to leave, and people just wanted to stay and not show complete effort, because it also goes back to education. As a kid, you know, they didn't push them to do well. They didn't push them to do the best they can. So why decide to do best they can when they're 20s, when they're 20, 25, 30, when their whole life they seemed to be okay. You know, they weren't rich, they weren't dreadfully poor, they weren't homeless, but you know, they were just they were just okay. So, you know, it all starts when you're a kid. The strive to become great starts as a kid. So, and that's what needs to be enforced in Egypt. That as a kid, you have to have that will to be great, and that's what they were lacking. I think there's a difference because not that the American education system's so great, but there's a lot of inspiration in America. I mean, in Egypt, there's not much inspiration around you because what's so good about America is that some areas have you can live in a town that has high social or high social class or a low social class. So you have some sort of inspiration. You know, I want to be like this. I want to live in this house. I want to live in here. But when you're so secluded into an area that everything looks the same and everything is so poor, and then you're just like, okay, then just why leave? You know, I might as well just stay and just live a normal life that I am, that what they think is a normal life, but in reality it's not. So there's no drastic inspiration in Egypt, and also a problem. No one's really inspired to be great. They just think that we'll just be lousy and it'll just work out. Not at all. They have no. They're just there and just living till, you know, kind of the end. My dad was very different, and you know, my dad was, I guess you could say, a hipster of their age. I mean, my dad always hated Egypt. He always hated it. He never wanted to be there. You know, he was always interested in international relations, always interested in what was going on in neighboring countries, and you know, America's the greatest country in the world, you could say. And that was always his dream to come to America. So I guess my dad's very lucky that he was the only one who was truly inspired, and he was luckily the one who made it out. And it's not that, and it's very difficult to make it out too. I mean, my dad came an illegal immigrant. He came here with a visa. The visa expired, and he just stayed. He never left. So so he took his chance. It's definitely very, very risky, but you know, what else do you have in Egypt? You know, there's really nothing to lose, really. So that's why he did it. And my relatives were scared. They were like, no, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to kick out. I'm going to get exiled. Yeah. But I mean, my dad did it right, I guess. I mean, a lot of other people did it too. A lot of everyone, basically all immigrants here did it. They're all illegal immigrants at one point. So, you know, he was lucky. I don't know, the marriage thing. He married a woman who was a citizen, and it was, yes, you could say it's a fake marriage. And then he got a citizenship, and then brought my mom over, and then she married my mom.
Okay.
But they knew they were getting married before. My mom was knowledgeable of what was going on. She was like, okay, do it. I mean, obviously it was for the better. It was for the great. I mean, there's nothing to deny by that, but definitely a lot of risks, and definitely my mom was definitely a little bit like weirded out about it. You're gonna get married, and then like it was definitely weird, but yeah, those are part of the risks that immigrants need to take, and I think it's really cool that not many people realize what risks that they do take. You know, risking love, risking family, risking, you know, your life basically. So yeah, that's one of the things that I admire my dad about the most, is that, and he's the person who inspires me today. I just really, really am thankful for what he did, and